Hi, I'm Stewart Spinks and welcome to episode 343 of my podcast, Beekeeping Short and Sweet. Happy Easter, everyone! Spring has sprung and our colonies are developing nicely. Brood nest areas are growing, and if you've overfed your colonies in late winter, you may find they're lacking a little space. Maybe it's time to consider adding another box. Beekeeping Short and Sweet, a beekeeping podcast for the inquisitive beekeeper with a short attention span. A beekeeper, in fact, just like me. Before we get into today's beekeeping conversation, and in the absence of anyone else supporting my podcast with an advert or two, here's my little self-promotion again. For all of you who haven't yet signed up to my Patreon page, I, together with Steph, have been creating beekeeping content for many years now. And if you're looking for some straightforward, down-to-earth tips and techniques, help and advice, then do take a look at my Patreon page. We have over 1,600 individual beekeeping posts, videos and podcasts filled with useful and timely help and advice. My approach is pragmatic and calm, sometimes entertaining, but always with help and support for beekeepers at the heart of what I do. I keep my videos short and concise wherever possible. No waffle, no flannel, just honest beekeeping advice from years of keeping bees. Take a look and join me for the new 2025 beekeeping season. It'll cost you less than a jar of honey, and you never know, there may be something there that will help you improve your beekeeping. Head over to Google and search for Patreon and the Norfolk Honey Company. Hi everyone, welcome back to the podcast. Happy Easter once again, and another week flies past, bringing with it a really mixed bag in terms of weather. But plenty for our bees and plenty for us to get stuck into. Our colonies have been making the most of the warmer afternoons. We've had maximum daytime temperatures of 15 to 18 degrees Celsius, probably higher in some of the more sheltered apiaries, and nighttime temperatures still remaining quite chilly. I've not seen any frosts this week, but it has been necessary to reach for the jacket and beanie hat a couple of times in the mornings. Now, I'm not complaining. We have friends in Pennsylvania in the USA who've had snow this last week, so count your blessings and enjoy the relatively benign conditions of our settled spring weather. I say settled conditions, but we have had some variety in the last week. One day in particular, Tuesday I think it was, saw very heavy rain here, and that would have kept even the most hardy of our colonies hidden away in their brood boxes. It didn't last long, and the next day we were back to the current pattern of chilly starts and warmer afternoons. Afternoons are where I find myself getting out to inspect our colonies right now. It's been too chilly most mornings, right up to midday on some occasions. It's not that I won't inspect my bees in cooler conditions, just right now I don't need to inspect them. As you'll remember, we have reduced our colony numbers significantly, and with a number of losses over winter, it's left me with more than enough time in the afternoons to go through all of the colonies with ease. It's also meant I have time to get home early to spend some time with my young grandsons, which is always a pleasure. With my usual pragmatic approach, I'm not terribly fussed about the general colony strength across our apiaries at the moment. We have plenty of honey for our customers, and the smaller nukes and overwintered colonies have plenty of time to build up and grow for a summer honey crop. Right now, checking for health is the most important thing for me, making sure every colony is well and best able to grow. It reminds me that our smallest nuke, with brood on just one frame, and barely a quarter of a frame really if I'm honest, should be slowly getting bigger. Our colonies will only develop a quantity of brood that they can manage, nurturing it through to adulthood. So imagine a brood nest with just a small patch of brood, maybe 100 cells as the maximum number of larvae that a tiny colony can take care of. That brood will take 21 days to emerge as adults, and only then can the growing workforce look to add a few more developing larvae to that growing patch. And remember, the older bees will be dying off, so it's not a constant number increase to that adult population. We just have to be patient with these smaller colonies and not try to do too much with them. As it warms up into late May and early June, we can add a frame of brood from another colony if we wanted. If you find yourself in the same position, don't be tempted to add extra frames of brood too early, because, as I've just been saying, there won't be enough adult bees to look after it, and the chances are it will just die through being chilled, wasting a good frame of brood from another colony. Patience is the key at this time of the year. Patience and being alert to the development of our colonies. With colony development, you could also start talking about reproduction. Okay? What I really mean is swarming. This week, I've checked all our colonies, and it's noticeable that a select group of them are starting to produce what I call rudimentary queen cells. Others call them play cups, but whatever you call them, they are a signal that the colony is working towards the production of queen cells. These rudimentary queen cells become a proper queen cell in their own right once an egg has been laid in them, and, of course, then the clock starts ticking. I have had some worried beekeepers get in touch saying they have queen cells already, and when I've asked for more information, it turns out that they're just describing these rudimentary queen cups, or rudimentary queen cells, however you want to describe them. Just don't panic, be watchful, and look closely at what you're seeing on the frame, and if you need to, as I do, use some reading glasses or even a magnifier to check inside those cups. Most of the early swarming that will occur will likely be down to lack of space. Congestion within the brood box, a need for more space for the queen to lay eggs in, and a worried beekeeper that's been continually feeding fondant over winter and into the spring will all lead to a likely scenario where queen cells are developed. If you're thinking to yourself, "Ooh, that sounds a little bit like me and my hive," something to consider is how you might have affected your colony to get to this position. On your next inspection, take a look at how much food the colony has in that brood box. Is it completely clogged with stores? Did you feed fondant continually through the winter months? Just make a mental note of that, or better still, write it in your beekeeping notes for next year. I know many of you will be just fine. Lots of space, healthy and growing colonies, queen excluders and supers added, with lots of drawn comb for your colonies to store that nectar in. And that's perfect. Keep up the good work. For the rest of us, we'll keep on keeping on with the beekeeping challenges ahead of us. To give you another example of what you might find, particularly because it's what I've found, is a smaller colony, maybe on 3 or 4 frames of brood, with the outside frames stuffed absolutely full of food stores. These frames, containing a mixture of liquid honey and solid ivy or something similar, provide barely any space for the brood nest to further develop. So how can you help this type of colony? Well, you could simply leave them to their own devices, and in some instances this works just fine. As the warmth of the sun gets into the hive over the coming weeks, the stored honey softens and the bees can make better use of it. The trouble with that is that the brood nest probably wants to grow too, and there's no space for them. More nectar and pollen comes into the hive, and we're back to that congestion challenge and swarming. Yes, you could add a queen excluder and super, more room for honey stores for sure, but that brood nest simply refuses to expand. The route I prefer to go is to add another brood box on top, ideally with drawn comb, but if not, frames with foundation will work just fine, if only a little slower. I don't worry about the full frames in the bottom box. I want them clogged up with food. I want the bees to only be able to move upwards and onto the foundation, if that's what I've given them. Obviously, an alternative is to just give them replacement frames of foundation either side of the brood nest in that single brood setup. The trouble is, if the weather turns, then they could be short on food. And I do find that adding frames of foundation to a single brood box does seem to encourage swarming. I think in this scenario the bees simply can't draw out the foundation into comb quickly enough. It causes a slowdown in egg laying and the colony decides to go. I see it all the time, and if my mailbox is anything to go by in previous years, it affects a lot of beekeepers too. Typically, I'll read something along the lines of, I added 6 frames of foundation into the brood box, removing all the old comb, and the ones full of solid honey that the bees wouldn't use. And they've swarmed. What did I do wrong? It's happened to me in the past too, so it's not unusual. I think the better option is to just add that second brood box on top of the bottom one and let them at it. No queen excluder, don't do that. The chances are you'll get the same result. I want the queen to move up. I want her walking around those new frames of foundation. Workers will follow and comb will be drawn. The queen will start laying in those cells as soon as she can, and then the colony has more space to use. It won't always stop swarming, but it certainly helps with some colonies. Once all the brood in the bottom box is capped, you can pop the queen excluder in between the 2 boxes and trap the queen in the top box. Then you can remove the outside frames in the bottom box if you so choose, or in fact wait until all of that brood has emerged and then take that bottom box away completely. Personally, I think those frames of full solid honey are great to use in making up nukes or in creating splits. As the weather warms into the summer, the honey will soften and the bees will be able to use it. Just be sure to use those frames where the brood nest is going to expand into. Oh, and another tip I was given many years ago is to scrape off the cappings to expose the honey beneath. If you leave those cappings in place, the bees will do the same mostly and not use those frames, and again it can cause swarming. The act of taking the cappings off seems to encourage the bees onto them, and the cells get cleaned out, ready for the queen to lay eggs in. There are so many methods available to us in the spring to develop our colonies and to get them onto quality, usable comb. The simplest is, I guess, what you might call a walk-away box method. Open up the hive, add a brood box filled with frames of drawn comb or foundation, and simply walk away. Obviously, sandwiched in between that is an inspection, but you get my meaning, I hope. All you do is complete an inspection and put a brood box on top. Just keep in mind, no queen excluder. Another great method is to go with a Bailey comb change. The Bailey board is great if you want to keep the adult bees off the grubby frames of comb below. The main difference here between the Bailey board and a queen excluder is that the Bailey board has an entrance, so foragers can return straight to the top box, and if you close off the bottom entrance, the bees will soon find their way to the Bailey entrance, and then it's just a waiting game until all the brood in the bottom box has emerged. This is a great method for now, as we don't want the spring brood to be lost, because they play a vital role in rebuilding the adult population after the winter bees start to die out. Remove that brood too soon and create a kind of brood break, and you could see the development of your colony suddenly stall. Not what you want to have happen right now. While you're doing all this, you can't help but notice the apparent sudden arrival of drones, another precursor for swarming, and actually a settling influence within the colony. Every colony needs drones. You'll spot them easily enough, and to be honest, once you do spot them, you'll wonder how you ever thought they could be anything else. I've had pictures sent to me with questions asking if these were workers, queens, and I've even had an email suggesting a poor unsuspecting drone was a European hornet. If you're looking to make increases, don't forget there are several ways you can do this. Each needs a slightly different approach, and of course, each has its own equipment requirements, so do make sure that you have all that kit available. Locally here, we now have the oilseed rape crop in full swing. It's not yet in full flower, but most plants are showing flowers and the fields are turning a fantastic bright yellow colour everywhere I drive. It's a crop that can deliver a monster crop of really tasty honey. Certainly, I think so. I know some of you disagree, but hey, we all have different tastes, and that's just great. For me, the trick is to delay adding supers for just a couple of more weeks. Sounds daft, I know. All those fields offering up huge amounts of nectar to be turned into honey, and yet here I am suggesting I delay the opportunity. As I've explained before, and I think it's worth just going over this process once more, we use this sudden flood of nectar to produce wax, and this all plays into the processes I've been describing earlier, adding a brood box with foundation in it to get the bees to draw out nice new comb for the queen to lay her eggs into. Again, I mentioned earlier, it's still chilly, and with that comes the chance that our colonies will ignore the nectar they've stored in the supers and head back down into the brood box to keep their developing brood nice and warm. This exposes the oilseed rape nectar in the supers to that chilly overnight temperature, and it's often the catalyst for granulation, the bane of all beekeepers' spring crop. Add a brood box and the bees will produce wax instead, using that nectar for wax production rather than honey. Draw out some lovely fresh comb for their queen to lay in, and if the timing is right, actually they will still give us a couple of supers of honey off that oilseed rape crop, which then doesn't granulate because the colony population has grown and the overnight temperatures have warmed up enough so that the anticipated granulation doesn't happen. Leave those boxes on the hive for as long as you like and it just won't granulate. It's one of those win-wins that you sometimes hear about. Well, that's it for this week. I'm off to make some sourdough bread for Easter, and with a little luck, maybe I'll find a chocolate Easter egg hidden somewhere in the back garden at home. Happy Easter, everybody. Before you go, don't forget to check out my website, www.norfolk-honey.co.uk, and for my latest videos and podcasts with more updates, tips and techniques, it's the same Patreon page, www.patreon.com/Norfolk Honey. And remember, I'm Stewart Spinks, and that was Beekeeping Short and Sweet.